Welcome to Old Guy Tech,
the OGT.TV recording studio.
Technology for the rest of us.
Hi, I'm Rob Charney, Old Guy Tech TV, and I'm here today with Steve Valentine he's running for judge. And so we got to get him in the studio here so we can figure out what he's all about. One of the things that's nice about this medium is I get to put him in here, and we get to get you on air and get you live so people can get that message out that I know you're working so hard to get there, because I think the toughest job there is in the world is campaigning. And I think just getting out there, stumping, you got it just to do that. So, Steve, I wanted to thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
I want to thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, good. So, why don't you do me a favor, and let's just start a little bit about yourself, your family, your background, how long you're practicing law, the usual stuff.
The usual stuff. All right. Well, I am a Southern California transplant.
From where?
Oxnard, California.
Okay.
Down there, I operated a feed store and a dog kennel. I raised and trained Labrador retrievers. What that meant is 5 days a week, I got to be outside with the dogs, shooting the shotguns, and just enjoying life.
Good.
Raised two daughters by myself, single father. Worked as a reserve deputy sheriff for 10 years for the Ventura County Sheriff's Department, and I did 2 years as a reserve officer for the Ventura Police Department, and then I worked 3 years for the Ventura Police Department, first as a cadet and then later as a dispatcher.
Oh, good.
Served a year on the grand jury in Ventura County, which is where I decided I needed to go to law school.
That's interesting. Having spent a year on the grand jury myself, I don't think I would have gotten to law school because of it, but that was a good analogy for you.
The difference was in Ventura County, the grand jury is respected, and not only by the public but also by the county officials.
Right.
Consequently, you're treated very well, and actually the department heads seem to enjoy having the grand jury come in because quite often it simply enhances the image of the various departments because they get a good grade when they've done a good job.
Right, absolutely.
So basically I served with the wife of an appellate court judge, and I worked very closely with the district attorney's office on a couple of cases, and that encouraged me to think about going to law school and not going back to the sheriff's department as a reserve.
Sure, yeah.
So
you did law school.
So I did law school. I had a ball.
That was where at? Where did you go to school?
That was Ventura College of Law.
Good. Okay. Right.
Basically, all of my teachers, except for, I think, one, were actually sitting judges in Ventura County or the appellate court. So I had a good background in the law, and then I finished off my time in law school working as an extern for a family law judge for essentially a semester. Turned out I had a knack for family law. I was able to work with people that were volatile and excited and basically thinking that their lives were falling apart, but I could talk to them and get them calmed down and help them through the problem. So when I finally graduated from law school, it seemed a logical extension that I would go into private practice and work with families in crisis.
Right.
While all that was going on, I moved to El Dorado County, having fallen in love with it over the 80s. I came up on a regular basis. So in 1993, I bought some property, and in 1995, I finished law school and moved my family to El Dorado County. Eventually, I met my wife, and she enjoys the outdoors like I do. We enjoy working with animals, with gardening. So it worked out to be a really good match. And she's been helping me on the campaign, making sure that I go where I need to go and do what I need to do.
You need that help. Everybody needs that help.
Just the scheduling has become atrocious.
Oh, yeah. It's very, very difficult. So, all right. So how many years have you practiced law?
I started practicing law in 1995.
Okay.
So that's roughly, 16 and a half, 17 years.
Right.
And my practice was opened in Cameron Park.
Oh, okay.
That's where I
Okay.
started.
Right.
My first office was in Burke Junction,
Uh-huh.
where I met Jerry Burke, and of course I also met Bernie Richter and
Yeah.
a few of
Oh,
the
yeah.
other old timers
Sure,
around,
sure.
and that just enhanced the fact that I love the community even more.
Yeah. So did you, what type of law did you practice?
Well, that was the nice thing. I could practice anything that came through the door if I found it interesting.
Okay.
Quite often cases would come in that I thought were too much for a one-man office, and I would pass those through, find somebody else to handle them. But
Right.
I got to handle criminal cases. I got to do family law. I did commercial contract law, landlord-tenant. I helped broker the sale of Burke Junction for Jerry when he sold the shopping center. So my background at that point, years in law enforcement, small business, I parlayed it all into
Yeah.
a general legal practice.
Wow, you did good. You
Did a
you
lot.
got a lot of experience in a lot of different things. Well, good. Well, all right. So we covered your family, you're practicing law. Now, you know what's close to my heart, and I believe it's the same as yours. Why don't you tell me your opinion of the Second Amendment?
My belief is that without the Second Amendment, the others are not worth the paper they're written on.
I say that every time. Without the second, there's not a first.
Yeah. Essentially, if you don't have the right to defend your rights, you have no rights at all.
Right.
I think that the Second Amendment, I think that the Supreme Court got it correct. The Second Amendment is in place to protect the people from the government,
Right.
not from outside
Right.
influence. I support the Second Amendment. I actually joined the NRA back in like 95 something. I was encouraged when I was on the bench to not have affiliations with any outside influences.
Right,
So
right.
you're encouraged to not be a member of, say, the Elks Lodge or the NRA or
Right.
anything that has a political stance.
Right. Right.
And wanting to do a good job and wanting to do the right thing, I let those memberships lapse. After I retired from the bench, then I upped my membership back in the NRA, and that's essentially when I started going to Tea Party meetings.
Good. Good. All right. So we know you're a strong Second Amendment person. How do you feel about concealed weapons permits?
Actually, I like the Alaska principle.
You don't need one?
Well, you get one when you get your driver's license. If you're a citizen and you have a driver's license, then there should be an excuse for the government to take it away. It should be yours by right.
Right.
So, maybe that's a little Wild West,
Well-
but that's how I feel. I think you have to protect yourself.
Yeah.
You cannot rely on the government. Even as good as our sheriff's department is, you cannot rely on the government to protect you.
Absolutely right. They're actually, I make a statement, and I even told John DiAgostini, I said, you're the cleanup afterwards. And you know what? They mean well. They really do. And if they're there to protect you, that's great. But it's difficult. We're in a large county. We're very rural in many areas. And I don't think that matters. My opinion is if you have a clean record, you should be able to get a concealed weapons permit no matter what. That's my opinion. But I'm glad to hear that you running for judge basically feel the same way.
Well, I had a concealed weapons permit for many years before I moved to this county.
Yeah.
I didn't feel I needed it as much after I was here for a few years, but it was a little unsettling down south
Yeah, it
when
is.
somebody would walk up in a grocery store and say, "Hey, I know you," and you look at them and say, "Did I ever arrest you?"
Yeah.
Up here, it's not so bad. People
Right.
say, "Hey, I know you," and it's
Right.
like, "Oh, you must have been in my courtroom," or small town, you run into everybody.
Oh, yeah, you do. Absolutely. One of the other things that's important for me is, what's your stance on the death penalty?
I don't think we use it. I
Okay.
mean, basically in California, we don't have a death penalty. It's on the books, but it's not used. I think if you have the death penalty and you fail to use it, you don't get the benefit.
Right.
And I do think there's a benefit.
Do you believe it's a deterrent?
I guarantee you that anyone executed will never kill anyone again. So,
It's a deterrent with that individual anyway.
an absolute deterrent.
Yeah, right.
But I also think that you have to have something that people that don't respect the law need to have a reason to obey the law. And there is an element of our society who doesn't think they have to follow the law. And the only reason they stay within the law is because they know there is a penalty.
Okay.
You take the death penalty off the market, it's not available, and all of a sudden those guys that are doing life in prison have no reason not to shank the guy that they want to shank. Why? What are you going to do? Give them two life?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've really got no penalty that they have to worry about.
Right.
I've heard the argument that it would save us a lot of money. So far, the folks making that argument, I've never heard anyone say how many attorneys we were going to lay off because we do away with the death penalty. I don't think DOJ is going to reduce their number of attorneys. I don't think the various public defender groups are going to do away with attorneys.
Yeah.
We have life without parole. We have maximum security, and we're still going to pay for that, whether they're in individual cells or not.
I think it's a housing argument. I think that's when you look at it, you look at who's in charge of housing these prisoners, and it's usually that situation. Even with our local jail here, with the and I forgot the proposition number right now that's forcing inmates from other areas back into El Dorado County. I was talking to the sheriff, and he's saying he's getting people up to 7 years of sentence in a jail that's designed to hold a person for no longer than 1 year. So we have some real issues with that one as well.
Well, that's a trickle down. That's the government has taken the money out of their system, put the prisoners in ours, and paid us 50 cents on the dollar to house them. Right. So it saves the state money, but it doesn't do anything for local government. All they've done is push that bill down the road and made us pay it a different way.
Yeah. Well, instead of a tax, it'll be a fee. Trust me. So, what is what's your feeling on 3 strikes?
I think 3 strikes, for the most part, it's a good plan because it puts pressure on people to do the right thing. I think when the 3rd strike is, stealing a pizza because you're hungry, I think that's probably a little bit out of line. The idea behind the 3 strikes originally was if somebody committed 3 felonies, and they envisioned at that time that they would be violent felonies, then you go away for life. Personally, I don't think you should have to go 3. I think, the first one we ought to be thinking about forever.
Right.
But realistically, the 3 strikes has mutated into a proposition where somebody commits a felony, and then they commit 2 misdemeanors that may or may not be violent, and all of a sudden they're doing a life without parole because the book says they've done it.
Right.
That's where charging by the district attorney comes in. That's where discretion gets used by sentencing judges. I think somebody who has felonies that are drug-related need treatment. I don't know that putting them away forever is going to solve our problems.
So help me, educate me a little bit on this. The person commits a crime, let's say it's 3rd strike. Does the district attorney at that point have an option to charge that person with a 3 strike or not?
Well, depending on what county you're in, the district attorney makes lots of decisions. Sometimes they don't allege the priors, in which case the case goes on as though there were no priors. Essentially, young DAs have gotten into the habit of you charge everything and let the jury sort it out. Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is 3 strikes doesn't give the jury the chance to sort that out, per se. If the average jury is told, this is a heinous crime, you need to convict him of this thing, the evidence supports a conviction, then they convict him of that, the 3 strikes happens automatically.
Right.
Basically, steps need to be taken by the filing agency to deal with it. I just recently had a case where a gentleman was charged with a felony, child endangerment. And the crime that he committed was he had his medical marijuana in his nightstand in his bedroom, and his girlfriend's 8-year-old son lived in the house. And the argument was, well, the child might have eaten that marijuana, and that could prove to be dangerous, so they charged him with a felony. Not only was that way overcharged, by the police. The DA insisted on prosecuting it as a misdemeanor, but we still had a jury trial over whether or not less than an ounce of marijuana was life-threatening to an 8-year-old child. I'll be honest with you, I've never tasted marijuana. In my training, I have smelled it, I've held it, but I've never sampled it. I can't imagine that it tastes particularly good. I think that's why when I was in college, everybody was putting it in brownies because they were trying to mask the taste. But the idea that this 8-year-old child would eat an ounce of marijuana just didn't fly for me, and apparently it didn't fly with the jury. The jury itself, they were upset that the DA had even filed it. They couldn't understand why any more than I could.
So let's talk about this then, since we're on this right now. We have in California medical marijuana laws on the books.
That's correct.
But the federal government does not recognize it.
That's also correct.
So how does that not put us in, I believe it is, some kind of conflict between the two? Is that not why some are allowed to have their medical marijuana, and then, of course, the federal government is still doing raids on growers and things? How do you feel that we should look at this issue between the federal government and state government? How can we correct this, or how can we make this work for us?
Well, my understanding is that when 215 was passed, the idea was people who needed the benefit for medical reasons would have access to marijuana, that they could grow their own in certain quantities, that you could have a caretaker who grew it for you in certain quantities. The problem that we've got is, as an example, in Sacramento, the federal prosecutors have raided a number of dispensaries.
Right.
They have raided them because they were considered to be for-profit ventures.
Right.
When you raid a dispensary that is not supposed to be making a profit and you find $100,000 in their safe, one has to ask, are they doing it out of the kindness of their hearts, or are they in fact doing it for profit?
So there's a decision that somebody has to make. How much can you actually make on this?
Well,
versus cost.
Essentially, the law was that you couldn't make a profit.
Right.
You could pay your expenses.
Right.
That's why you had collectives where somebody's growing it, you give it for free to your friends who have their cards. When their crop is ready and they harvest it, they put it back into the dispensary. It's given for free to those people that have their cards, and there wasn't supposed to be money changing hands. It's muted into a thing where because you have to have a location, somebody's got to pay the rent. Right. It's not done for free, so you let them add a little fee to it. That offsets the rent, the utilities. Okay, fair enough. But when you start talking about tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars, it is no longer a free distribution.
Right.
It has now become a business.
Right.
The federal government will ignore personal possession. They don't go out and make arrest on people that have a half ounce in their pocket.
Okay.
They do, however, think that when you have a 10-acre grow, or when you have a for-profit situation, that then falls under the federal statutes, and they will act on it. I don't know where the line comes.
Right.
As a superior court judge, that is not a question that would normally come before me. My job is California law.
Okay.
So if somebody comes to me and they've been charged with possession of marijuana and they produce their 215 card, they have their prescription, the case is dismissed, as long as it's a reasonable amount.
Okay, and reasonable is under an ounce?
For the most part.
For the most part.
Okay. I would probably accept an argument that a couple of ounces might still fall under that.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to walk around with it in your pocket.
Right,
but,
right.
I mean, I understand if you're taking it home and putting it away.
So is there a correlation, in your opinion, between what's happening now and alcohol? Many years ago, when we faced a situation where alcohol was illegal, and we had I've lost the term right now.
Well, prohibition.
Prohibition. So when we had prohibition, we had a situation that was uncontrollable. We made very wealthy criminals. People were going to get the alcohol no matter what. Is there a correlation between what we're seeing in marijuana and alcohol?
I suspect that there probably is a correlation. I'm not sure that it's as benign as that. The big problem is that quite often marijuana is introduced to younger and younger people, so that you're not talking about 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds. Now you're talking about 11 and 12-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And you got to draw a line somewhere. The fact that you require a 215 card, that's not supposed to be issued to children. It's for adults. That's one way to control it. I mean, the reality is we have trouble even controlling tobacco.
Right.
As a bench officer, I handled juvenile cases where first offenders for marijuana, cigarettes, alcohol came to my courtroom. And you talk to them, you try to understand where they're coming from, and for the most part, they were kids that were hanging around older kids. They did it, so I do it.
Sure.
Dad smokes, so I smoke.
Peer pressure will always be there, and of course, if your father's smoking, you're going to go, well, obviously, there's nothing
wrong. It must not be anything wrong because he's still alive.
That's right. So he's still doing his thing. Okay.
So, and so really, it is an education that you have to work on to educate people that what happens. Another fallacy is that marijuana is completely benign. Yeah. It does have effects, and it has effects on young people that it may not have on older people. Some of the research has shown that it interferes with emotional maturity, that individuals who smoke large quantities of marijuana when they are young don't emotionally develop into adulthood. And those are the guys, Wayne and Garth. You got two 30-year-olds sitting on a couch smoking dope and think everything is good, and the reality is everybody thinks they're idiots.
Right.
They don't notice it.
Yeah. They don't know any better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's switch topics here a little bit. What's your opinion about cameras in the courthouse?
Well, as long as you're not taking my picture, they're okay.
Well, they would be.
I can't be responsible for broken camera equipment.
You're getting through ours just fine, so it must be okay.
Actually, I don't mind it. I think cameras in the courtroom, especially since we're trying to have an open and public forum where court is open to the public, I see no reason that cameras shouldn't be allowed in. The real problem you get, and the classic example of that would be the O.J. trial.
Right.
The attorneys started hamming it up for the cameras and doing things for the cameras that they probably would not have done had the cameras not been there. So if there were always cameras and it wasn't a big deal, then I think the attorneys would fall in line and you wouldn't get the grandstand play and the theatrics.
Right.
And you're still going to have them play to the jury because that's how it works.
Right.
But I think in the long run it would be beneficial.
Maybe something that could be done statewide, uniform, all cases are recorded or available online. And
Correct.
People can watch it. Because I know for myself there's probably a number of cases that I'd love to sit for an hour or two and watch the interaction between, all the parties on that. So I'm kind of in favor of that as well. So I think that's a good idea.
So when you get a chance, you should come up to the courthouse and sit through a small claims proceeding.
Yeah.
It's you would be amazed at what you can learn.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Well, okay. So one of the problems I think I know that a number of people have with judgeships is the fact that it's an elected position. So that throws politics into the mix a little bit. How does politics affect you in the fact that you're running for a judge? I mean, there's got to be some kind of effect there.
Well, the problem is, and I've really thought of this, is I don't know what system you could have that would be better.
Yeah.
Everybody complains about our federal system. Those judges are appointed for life. The reason they're appointed for life is because that way they're not involved in the political fray.
Right.
But if you watch the courts and you watch the decisions, you will understand that, in fact, politics does sometimes play a fact. The nice thing about California is that we do elect our judges at the Superior Court level.
Right.
Not at the appellate court level, not at the Supreme Court.
Right.
Those we only get an election as to whether we are going to retain them. So what you're actually running for at that stage is to keep your job. That's an evaluation of your performance so far, not a selection of who could do a better job.
Right.
Superior Court, traditionally we have elections, and that's so that you are representative of the people in your community. It gives the people in your community, those people that you are going to judge, an opportunity to decide who they think is the most ethical, trustworthy, and competent person to be the judge. It's not a popularity contest. It's not, who's your buddy. It's who do I trust to sit on the bench and evaluate the evidence and give us a decision. Now,
well, I would think, I know what my argument is that I want somebody that's going to represent my views, have similar, we talked about the Second Amendment, we talked about CCWs, we've talked about certain things, so I'm certainly not going to vote for somebody who's anti-gun, or anti-Second Amendment, or anti-whatever that I may be in favor of. So that's the control part, that I get a chance to, vote for somebody that's going to represent my opinion. How do you feel about the situation that we have a sitting Superior Court judge right now running for re-election, and he has two opponents? How unusual is that?
Well, first off, it's very unusual to have a sitting judge challenged by anybody.
Right.
But we don't have a judge running for re-election. What we have is an appointee.
Okay.
The difference being
Right.
the people never voted on him.
That's right. He was appointed by Schwarzenegger.
He was
right?
appointed by Schwarzenegger during the last weeks of the administration.
Right.
That particular week, Schwarzenegger appointed, I believe it was 18 Superior Court judges, essentially putting his thumbprint on California law.
Yeah.
The question now is, the people of El Dorado have to decide if he is appropriate to judge in El Dorado County.
Right.
From what I have been told, from what I've heard, he's probably not the best choice. The thing is this time the voters do have a choice. They have a career bureaucrat who has been a Superior Court judge for 16 months who doesn't seem to get it. And you've got myself, 6.5 years on the bench, essentially my whole life in service back to the community, whether it was as a reserve officer,
law of some form or another,
law some form or another,
right.
and a small businessman. I understand what businesses go through.
Right.
I haven't been on the public dole for my whole career. Now they get an opportunity to choose. Do you want a Schwarzenegger appointee, or do you want somebody who has real life experience, who's been in the community, who's worked in the community, and who has taken care of justice pretty much my whole life?
Right.
There's another choice, a fellow who's really nice. I like him. I've known him since I moved to this county. But his office has been in Folsom. He opened an office in El Dorado County in October last year. He didn't have an office here. He practiced here. He also has limited his practice to family law. We did a forum a few weeks ago where we were talking to a group, and the question was, what's your trial experience? The one gentleman said he's never tried a jury trial at all. The sitting judge said, well, he did one once, many years ago, a day-and-a-half civil trial. Now, I'm looking at that thinking, how can you have the ability to do a jury trial, to know what's going on even in the courtroom, when you haven't done one?
Right.
I've done a number of criminal jury trials. I did jury trials in El Dorado County. I did one in Alpine County. That was a bear case, fish and game violation.
Sure. Right.
I retired. Shortly after I was retired, I was retained on 2 different cases. One where a gentleman was charged with DUI while he was sitting in a courtroom. Nobody saw him drive a vehicle. Nobody saw him park a vehicle, but he had his keys in his pocket, so he must have driven. I finally got that one dismissed. And then I did the criminal trial I told you about, where the gentleman was charged with the felony child neglect.
Right.
and that went to a jury trial.
Right.
And by the time I got from the courthouse to my office, the clerk had called and said, "By the way, your jury is back in. Come back to the courthouse."
It was that quick.
It was that quick.
Yeah.
And the verdict was not guilty, all counts. So,
Yeah.
you know.
So you've got the experience. You've been a sitting court judge. You believe in the Second Amendment. Sounds to me like you're right in line with where I'm going.
Well, I certainly hope so. And, before it's all over with, we probably going to have to talk about guns sometime today.
Yeah, well, we can do that maybe another segment. I
Okay.
think you and I think this is the whole idea of this one is to get information about you as a judge out.
Okay.
And I think that's the whole idea. So right over my shoulder here is a camera. That's
Okay.
your camera. I want you to take the next 30 seconds or so and tell everybody out there why it is they should vote for you.
Well, I think 6.5 years experience on the bench, working with people in crisis. I did family law. I did small claims. All the areas where you need somebody to make a sound decision based on the facts. I can make those decisions. I've always been able to make those decisions, and I think I can make the right decision. Ask your friends, ask your family, have they ever been in front of me? Did I treat them fairly? And did I give them a good, just ending?
Well, that sounds perfect to me. Sounds like a great way to wrap this up. So I want to thank you again, of course, for coming
Thank you.
to our little studio, and we'll get you up on the air fairly soon.
Okay.
And we want to get that message out. And I want to thank you out there for watching Old Guy Tech TV. I'm Rob Charney. We'll see you soon. This episode of Old Guy Tech TV is brought to you by Ward's Automotive, specializing in Banks Power and Pack Brake, servicing your car or truck and specializing in diesel engines. Over 30 years of service, located in Diamond Springs, California. Give them a call at 530-626-5588.